It is estimated that around 90% of all millionaires invest in some form of property, and in this video I'm going to go through the basics of what buy-to-let property is and why if you don't invest in property you really need to learn how. For instance, did you know that Forbes estimates that property has created the third most amount of billionaires in the world, with the top two spots taken up by the finance and fashion industries. So unless you're planning on mastering the finance world or setting up a fashion label, property for most of us is the most lucrative way to build wealth, and in my view, one of the easiest. So why property? Well, look at this table and need I say more? This data is direct from the land registry and shows the average house price from April 1968 to July 2023. You can see it goes up and up and up. Yes, there are periods prices have gone up as well as down, but ultimately it's quite clear that the general momentum in house prices is upwards. The average house price in April 1968 was £3,595, and today it is over £285,000. So the space in 55 years, it increased a shocking 80 times. Now, before you shout at the screen that I need to take into account inflation, don't worry, the Bank of England has this quite useful calculator that lets you type in the price of something in the previous year. So here I've typed in the £3,595, which was the average house price back in 1968, and what that would be worth today, taking into consideration inflation. And the answer is just over £52,000. So what does this mean? Well, it means that if you had bought the property in 1968, on average today, it would have outperformed inflation by almost 5.5 times, which is just ridiculous. Now, most property trainers talk about house prices doubling every 10 years on average, but is that true? Well, I've taken all that data from the land registry and created this table. It shows the average house prices every 10 years between this year back to 1973, and you can see it is in the right sort of ballpark. You can see most recently has increased almost double at 1.7 times. The decade before, far less at 1.3 times, but that was between 2003 and 2013, which within that was when we had the worst financial crash since the Great Depression. And the previous decades before that, prices were actually increasing more than double every 10 years, which is pretty crazy. So need I say more? There is a reason why people use the term something is as safe as houses. But what is the property trap? Well, let's head back to that table of average house prices. But below, I've now added the percentage change in house prices over the same period. It basically shows month by month the annual percentage change in prices. So 1 month here, for example, prices increased almost 30%, but then another month dropped almost 20%. Here lies the problem. The inexperienced investor cares too much about the bottom table. They're panicking the moment prices go down, they're celebrating whenever prices go up, or worse, they're selling when they're panicking and prices are dropping, and they're then buying when prices are rising. They care too much about the short term of prices going up or down, month by month, year by year, when in reality, property is not a month by month or year by year game. You are investing for the long term. The experienced investor looks at the top table in 10-year installments, and you can see clearly, decade by decade, they are winning every time. No stress, no worry. Property is a long-term game. So how do you invest £1 in property and get £3 on top? Well, that, my friends, is a beautiful thing called a buy-to-let mortgage. Property is one of the few things you can easily invest in and actually borrow money to do it. So rather than buy one house for cash at £100,000, you can buy 400 grand houses with a 25k deposit in each, totaling £100,000 of your money, and borrow the other £300,000 from the bank. But what difference does that make in reality? Well, for example, if you bought a house 10 years ago for 100 grand for cash, and let's say today it's worth 1.7 times, which is what the average increase has actually been according to the land registry over that period, that same house would be worth £170,000 today. So you would have made a really nice 70k profit in that. However, if rather than using cash, you got 75% mortgages and you bought 4 houses using your 100k and borrowed the additional 300k, all 4 of those houses would have increased to the value of 170k, a profit of 70 grand on each property, totaling an extra £280,000. You would have almost tripled your initial investment of £100,000 in 10 years using buy-to-let mortgages. The whole time your tenants would have been paying you rent, that would have covered your mortgage, covered your maintenance fees, as well as giving you a nice profit month on top. Quite literally, what do you have to lose? Investing in property is quite literally as safe as houses. Well, of course, although I'm incredibly passionate about property investing, like with anything, you can go about it badly as well as change your life financially with it. So knowledge is the difference between success and failure. If you want to learn more, check out my other videos.